Happy Tuesday, everyone. Let's try this video again. I hate doing videos twice. I did this video once and no one could hear what I said in this video. I kind of made the point that it was the greatest thing that I've ever said in any of my videos, and no one could actually hear it. It's the greatest song ever written, but no one could hear us sing it. So coming up at 1 p.m. today, Sharm Sharma. He has a show called the Sharm Sharma Show, fitting, that has to do with, I guess you could say, Indian politics. I was fascinated. One of my subscribers pointed me to this after listening to Friedrich talk about the BJP and those type of elements. So she hated what he had to say. She hated completely what he had to say. And she was like, look, there's somebody else who I'm going to point you in a direction to that can give you a little bit more insight on this stuff. So I'm going to bring him on the show and we're going to have a conversation and related to Tulsi and you could say the support of Modi and for the most part Indian politics and what we're missing and the problems associated with the previous video. Like this is a new area for me. I'm not hip to Indian politics, so I'm open to point of views on this. I want to hear it, especially in the context of Tulsi Gabbard. So this should be a pretty interesting interview coming up at 1 p.m. It was supposed to be at 12, but I thought it was supposed to be at 12, but that was my fault. All right, so YouTube policy. YouTube is changing their recommendation policy. Now, what that means is, initially, right now, or what used to be, you could say YouTube policy, was to keep you on the site longer. The way they kept you on the site longer was by giving you videos that were similar to the video that you were watching. Meaning, if you were watching MSNBC, another video from MSC may come up on a similar topic as to what you were watching. That said, if you were watching alien videos, then you may invariably end up in a space of aliens eating babies. And you leave out saying, oh my God, aliens eating babies. I've just seen 20 videos telling me that aliens were eating babies. Well, you can see the problem with this and why people get somewhat freaked out by this. It allows people to go down a particular rabbit hole of thought by giving them videos that are similar to the content that they were looking for. You know, so their solution to this is videos that come close to violating their guidelines will no longer be used in the recommendations. If you wanted to see a video about aliens eating babies, you can go and see a video about aliens eating babies, but we are not going to recommend that video to you about aliens eating babies. We're going to try to guide you in the direction of truth. So videos that come close to violating their guidelines, put that in quotes, get shafted. They're picking winners or losers. Now, I can understand. I look at this in two ways. And I have two feelings about this because I understand this in two very different ways. From an engineering standpoint, you have a problem. People are getting certain videos that are off the rails in regards to being on the reality meter. And you want to try to do something about those videos being off the rails on the reality meter. And so you say, okay, we're going to stop recommending those videos. Great. How do you do that? How do you stop recommending those videos? And do that while not also destroying content that is a dissenting point of view, but a truthful dissenting point of view, which, from the standpoint of closely violating our guidelines, could violate those guidelines. It depends on what you mean by closely violating your guidelines, right? I mean, at the end of the day, somebody is making a political choice on what that means. Close can mean all sorts of things. I mean, the very fact of using the term close is meant to be ambiguous because it's meant to allow a wide section of latitude for the company, meaning the company doesn't want to constrain itself within a rule set, so it uses the term closely violating our guidelines to allow a wide latitude of space. My issue is this. Videos that are dissenting points of view. So let's say a video on Syria, for example. They say chemical weapons have been launched by Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And the dissenting point of view says, how do you know that? If you're using Facebook and Twitter as being the guide for this, and if you're using the white helmets as being the guide for this, then you don't really know if there are chemical weapons strike in Syria. You don't know. You don't have any hard evidence about this. That's a dissenting point of view. That dissenting point of view goes against the official narrative of events. Does that dissenting point of view count as being close to violating the guidelines? And as such, with video that's pushing back on a narrative, a regime change narrative that's pushed forth by people with political objectives in mind, will that get pushed to the side? Meaning, does that video not get recommended if a person was even looking for the content that's pushing back on the narrative that's taking place? They've removed anti-war voices off of Facebook and Twitter at the behest of various governments. My question is, what does closely violating the rules mean? And what is that going to mean for content that treads the line? How do you make a distinction? Right, that is the question. I mean, you can do a few of these. Somebody's saying that what's taking place in Venezuela is a coup. Does that get pushed to the sidelines as being, closely violating the rules without necessarily violating the rules, at which point that's not within the recommendation list? There could be a few of these. The Syrian chemical weapons is one of them. What is this? Weaponizing. Okay, I don't know what I wrote here, but questions on UFOs. So when the New York Times coming out with the bombshell report showing that they were investigating UFOs, one video after the next, which videos do they decide are valid versus videos that are non-valid? And do they push you into sections that says this is not real? Like, this is a very sketchy change that they're making here. And I can, like I said, understand why they're making it in the context of trying to get rid of certain videos. They call Jimmy Dore a conspiracy theorist. CNN did, if you remember when they wrote that article. Do videos that Dore pushes, are videos that Dore is pushing, are those going to get pushed to the wayside? What about videos that I push? Are those going to get pushed to the wayside? I am concerned about this for various reasons. I mean, part of it is self-interest, but part of it is also, I guess you can say, self-interest in another point in the content that I want to find, the content that I want to watch. Now, they've made the point that if you are subscribed to a particular channel, you'll still see those videos, but the question becomes recommendations. And many of the recommendations in some degree drive the content that people see. Meaning, you're much more likely to get somebody to click your video if it pops up in a recommendation as opposed to them going out and seeking your video. After all, YouTube is a massive, massive channel. It's going to just be lost in the vault of YouTube. So yeah, this is somewhat of a worrying change to me, even though it's coming across as somewhat innocuous. And like I said, I see it from two sides. I see it from the programmatic side, as a software engineer, the challenge of doing it. But I also see it from the side of news, political opinion, political dissent, and how dissent that goes against the mainstream narrative is easily called conspiracy theories. In the same way that anybody who pushes back against Israel is called anti-Semitic, or anyone who runs against Hillary Clinton in a race that's a man is called, sexist. And even some that were women. We'll see how this unfolds, but I suspect closely violating our guidelines is going to be somewhat of a political decision. So I'm going to end this here because, like I said, I've already did this video once. YouTube wants to only push the establishment message. Yeah, that's my concern. Like, this is the establishment message. This is clear to be pushed. So we're going to give these people videos from this pool, less from the other pool. But that other pool may be just as legit. Meaning the point of view of the other pool, they just don't like. Again, I understand that there are some videos out there saying 9/11 doesn't exist. But even videos on that, that are making legit questions on that, do those videos get pushed to the side? I am dramatically concerned with this. I understand the effort of trying to lessen the impact of news that's absurd. The moon is made out of Swiss cheese. We can prove it. And you have 20 other videos behind it saying the exact same thing. But there are legit questions to the official narrative of things. And those legit questions should not be silenced. And my fear here, my suspicion here, is that the closely, come close to violating our guidelines is a political statement, just in and of itself is a political statement. And I'm very concerned about what that means, because what that means is going to be determined by whoever's in charge. So I'll end this here. I mean, at some point we need to have a conversation about treating these utilities as commons. seeing as this is the form of dialogue to which we take out in a larger world. I mean, our world has changed. Let's be honest. Like, we're not in a village anymore, and the only people that you talk to are people within your village. Human nature, like water in a glass, it expands based upon the environment that it's in. So in an area where you have just a few people, a few connections, you make those few connections. But now you're living in somewhat of a globalized world. And I mean in the context of interconnectivity that patches us into everywhere else around the world. So something takes place in Venezuela. It's not a situation where you're relying on mainstream media to give you that information. You can have people in Venezuela talking to you in the instant that it takes place. Hell, they can be live streaming what's taking place as it takes place. Like, you're in a different world. This different world is somewhat relatively new, so people are kind of feeling their way out to figure out how they're gonna, you could say, evolve within the context of this new world. It is what it is. It's not good, bad, or anywhere between. It just is what it is. Some of the factors that affected individuals in that local way, meaning what you could say fake news or conspiracy theories, now gets magnified to a larger context, just because we're in a larger context. It is what it is. Killing a particular stream of thought, especially if that stream of thought is somewhat legit, is problematic. Especially for the people who are in that context, who are trying to feel their way in the context, and there's something there that's picking winners and losers in the process. Our commons is no longer just this kind of, village that the people are puttering around in. Our commons at this point has become, to some degree, a larger world. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Stitch, all of these tech companies, for the most part, that allow us to interact and engage with one another, has become almost a new digital commons. But it's the digital commons that we don't control. Because we don't control it, it's purely held within corporate interests. And that corporate interest is not always in line with our own. Oftentimes it's not. It's the goal being to maximize profit is not necessarily the same thing as allowing people the space to be people. They're choosing certain thoughts that they like versus thoughts that they don't like. That becomes somewhat problematic. And yeah, there's a political context to that. When the thoughts that they're choosing have a political consequence on the world in regards to what people support in a political space, or for that matter, a military space. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. At least I think it's a big deal. So I'm going to end this video here. This video wasn't meant to be long, and I have an interview coming up at 1. So if you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, hit like, and subscribe. And if you're really digging the content, please consider supporting through PayPal or Patreon. We are doing patron appreciation shows every week. We've started that back. We're trying to do a patron push. I don't trust YouTube. And it's stuff like this that definitively makes me distrust YouTube. This idea that the rules changed on a whim. I have no idea what this is going to mean for certain channels, either that I watch or content that I push. So we will see. That said, if you want to support the content, please consider doing so through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. I'll see you shortly. Bye-bye.